late April, um, and in a time when we weren't able to necessarily be physically together. And of course, that continues today, and we do everything we can to stay connected. And so for me, it's a chance just to learn a little bit, to think a little bit, to share, and often have someone special in my life to meet with all of you and to learn from as well. And so I asked a very close friend, Sarah Allen, to come and join us on this Monday morning. And Sarah is the executive director of Repair the World Detroit, a wonderful social justice, social action organization, a national organization that Detroit was one of the first chapters of it that began. She's been with them since she left us as our educator at Temple Shir Shalom 3+ years ago, I believe. And Sarah, a moment before we started, had her 2-month-old son in her arms, Judah Michael. She's a proud new mom, first child, and she's said maybe she wasn't the best choice. She argued with me, but I made her do this because she's been on parental leave since her son was born and hasn't been, on the ground doing the work. But I know she lives this, and I thought it'd be a great chance to talk to her about Repair the World and some of the good work that's going on in Detroit. So welcome, Sarah.
Hi, Rabbi. Thanks for having me on. Please ignore the dark circles, the unbrushed hair, and I tend to forget my words a lot lately. It's probably sleep deprivation, but I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we wanted to wake you up. We wanted to make sure that you're still with
You
us.
think I
And
wasn't up at 3 o'clock this morning and then at 5 o'clock this morning?
oh,
No, I'm so
yikes!
glad to be here. It's really nice. I love being a new parent and I relish any opportunity I get to have some adult conversation, use my brain in different ways.
Awesome, awesome. Well, good. So let's start with, Temple Shir Shalom has been connected with Repair the World since the day it started, really. Thanks to some of our youth, right, who jumped on board with Peer Corps and some of the first things that were happening. But why don't you tell us, in the broad strokes, the vision of what Repair the World is and its mission?
Yeah. So, first of all, I only know about Repair the World. I only found out about Repair the World through Shir Shalom because, like you said, so many of our B'nai Mitzvah kids were doing our middle school and then high school program called Peer Corps. So that's how I learned about the organization. What we started in Detroit back in 2013, and the broad mission, the vision is that social justice, social action through service, meaning volunteering, becomes a core part of our Judaism. And we spread that broadly so that service and pursuing a more just world just becomes a core tenet that we live out in action and not just in word across our Jewish community.
Awesome. Um, so since you jumped on board, what's been some of the most exciting things that you've been engaged in directly?
Yeah, I think that some of the things that I've enjoyed are shifting our strategy. When I started with Repair the World, coming into the city of Detroit was still pretty new. And for some of our Jewish community, pretty exciting. And for some in our Jewish community, like an absolute non-starter, like, no, we're not going to Detroit. And things have changed pretty dramatically. I think we can all agree that the city of Detroit for our Jewish community has become a place for, well, pre-pandemic, I hate to say it, has become a
Right.
place for dining and recreation and social gathering. And so things have really changed. And one of the things that I've enjoyed most in my time as executive director here has been continuing to bring people into the parts of the city and connect with communities that they wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to connect with, but then also taking Repair the World's work out into the suburbs as well. So we've continued to bring people in, and we've also continued to spread out through programs that I think you're going to mention, like Powered by Repair, where we directly partner with synagogues out in the suburbs.
Yeah. I found one of them one time I can think of personally when we were brought into Detroit was it was the summer of 19 when there was an ice raid that was being announced that was supposedly going to be happening in Detroit, in certain neighborhoods and Hispanic neighborhoods in particular. And so you asked us to come down to help educate people, to hand out flyers saying, hey, these are your rights. Make sure you're aware. You don't have to open your door for anyone. And my daughter and me, spent the afternoon, I don't know, for a number of hours walking around with other people and with your mom as well and stepdad. It was awesome to experience that together. And I love seeing people who cared just about others and wanted people to recognize what their rights are in this country. And again, Repair brought that to light for us as a community and a congregation. And we sent your email out to our entire congregation.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the things I hear most often in my work is, I really want to get involved. This issue is really important to me. This work is really important to me. I just don't know how. I don't know how to connect. I don't have the community connections to find where I can be useful and where the work is needed. How do I get involved? And that's where Repair the World comes in. We have lots of connections across the city. We always try to follow the lead of the leaders in the community. So we don't go in anywhere and tell people what they need. We sit back, we listen. They say, this is what we need. And we say, okay, we're here to help. And that was a great example of a time when we were called to action and we showed up.
You mentioned Powered by Repair. And so, I don't know, it was the spring of 2019 when we applied for that partnership to be a part of that. And we're one of the synagogues who are blessed to have that opportunity. And so it's been cool for us because one thing that Powered for Repair has done has been a number of seminars that Sally Jo Levine, our social action chair from Shir Shalom, and me have attended with you and done some deeper learning, right? Not just surface stuff, but deeper conversations about what matters and who we are as well. And there's two conversations that really stick with me, that one that was very intentional and one less so. So the intentional one was about systemic racism and white privilege. And it was, I think, last January we had this conversation. So way before George Floyd had been murdered, before the protests of this summer, and before those words were being used so prominently in our country as points of conversation and awareness. At SISTI last night, our youth group, that was the evening's conversation and talking about what that means. So you brought that to light. I mean, things I may have been aware of, but just like how deep seated it is, and not to take certain things for granted, our privilege as well. And I appreciated that too in the conversations we were able to develop then. But so like you said, I mean, you were still working back in June. Judah hadn't arrived yet. But what kind of things is Repair engaging in and doing as far as combating systemic racism in light of social justice, and what your priorities are there?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's actually been really hard. And I hear this a lot, and I talk about this a lot with folks who want to start a journey of learning about this. Sometimes it feels like when you're trying to begin learning about systemic racism and white privilege and how to become an anti-racist person, sometimes it feels like you can't win. Like you're so nervous you're going to do something wrong that you don't do anything at all. And that feeling, I don't think goes away. I've been in this work for 3 years now. I know people who have been in this work for far, far longer than that. And mistakes are made no matter what. And I think that Repair as an organization has made some mistakes inside, internally and externally. And back in June, something that comes to mind is that Repair, mostly me, in partnership with some folks at the Federation, some folks with some other Jewish organizations in the community, really wanted to put together a panel discussion to hear more from Jews of color, to bring Jewish folks who are people of color, bring their voices to the forefront. And so we had this idea to put together this panel discussion, and we moved too quickly. We moved too fast. We didn't bring in those voices of Jews of color to the planning process, and we heard about it. and rightfully so. So we made a mistake there. But we're not going to stop trying. We're continuing to learn. We're continuing to put opportunities out into the community to learn. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to do some of that work by ourselves. So I know I've seen a lot of reading lists going out. I've seen a lot of articles circulating. I think that what Repair is good at doing is putting together small groups for learning, which, you know, doesn't always splash across the front page of the Jewish News, but I would argue is even more important. So some of the things that we're looking to do in the coming months, putting together some book clubs. We always like to post articles and we ask for discussion. And then I think the cornerstone of what we do with service, because everything we do goes back to service. We're a service organization. We ask people to come out and volunteer with us, but it's always rooted and grounded in some kind of learning that has to do with justice. So really, our niche is to bring you out and to serve with us, but to also open up discussions around white privilege, around white supremacy, to talk about how the service we are doing or just did connects to issues of racism in our city. So I'll give you an example. We did, let's see, a food drive over Pesach where we had people come to Share Tzedek, drive through, drop off some food donations for Gleaners Community Food Bank. It was all very safe, contactless, etc. But before we did that and after we did that, we offered a brief Zoom call where we gave people the information about how they could donate the food, but then we also talked about food inequity in our system and how food justice, namely in access to food that's affordable and healthy and appropriate, how that affects the Black community disproportionately. So there's always that learning tied in. And if you participate in that with us, I truly believe that you will walk away with a little bit more knowledge. You'll be a little bit further along in your journey towards becoming anti-racist.
Yeah, it's important. Another thing you brought to light for us, or built upon something we already done as well, was, God, I don't remember when those conversations. It was early during the pandemic when we had that meeting. It was a webinar that you created with some different leaders in the community and how the pandemic was impacting them. And the executive director of Life Remodeled was with us that day as well.
Oh, it was his webinar.
Oh,
I was
okay.
just on it. Yeah.
Was
Can't
it
take
mine?
credit for that.
Okay. Well, we're part of Life Remodeled this week. Temple Shir Shalom was bringing a
Oh,
group down there and doing
nice.
that too. So, I
Oh, you know
love
what,
those.
Michael? You're right. We did both. I went on his webinar and he went on mine. He came on mine. You're right. You're right.
Okay, good. So anyway, I'm glad that we're, finding ways to do the service. I mean, we're frustrated right now because we want to be out there doing stuff, but it's so difficult to in these times of social distancing, right? And learning is wonderful and important to be doing, right? And we're continuing that. And my friend Pastor Ken Flowers and I are trying to create some more work opportunities together for our congregations, and for people to connect with one another. I mean, that for me is social justice, just meeting one another and building those relationships that we can then go out and do good work together too. But I think we really have to stretch ourselves to find ways. And you said before you started, you're worried about what the winter is going to bring, just as far as health goes and how that will impact. Because so you and me are locked in our homes, right? And but we have food, we're okay, right? We have health, we have access to health. The great concern that I feel right now is the people who aren't noticed.
Yeah. And, when the pandemic was raging here and there was all this information coming out about how it was disproportionately impacting Black communities, low income communities, communities of color, you know, I certainly stepped back and said, why? Why is that happening? But I hope we all did, because it's not like Black people are just more susceptible to getting COVID-19. That's not the answer. The answer is that lower income communities and communities of color are less likely to be able to stay at home and work from home because they have jobs that take them out into the community. And there are myriad other reasons why that just speak to the inequities that are deeply, deeply rooted in our community, right here in Detroit, in Metro Detroit, and that really have to be addressed.
I appreciate you, Sarah, because you've always been someone who speaks honestly and with integrity and from experience, and you don't sugarcoat things either. So, there's no BS, and you say, okay, this is the reality. Sarah, for those who don't know, she began her work in doing Teach for America and teaching in Chicago, and not the easiest of neighborhoods, huge immigrant population, in a preschool classroom. And had some very interesting stories from that experience that she would tell us and share with us, and what really obviously shaped her learning and the work she does today as she's grown. And I love seeing her do it. So it's good stuff. Well, believe it or not, it's 9:18 already. Our time always goes quickly. Again, it's a touch, it's a taste, but learn more about Repair the World. It's online. I posted their link as well on my Facebook under the announcement for today. You
Thank
mentioned a
you.
book. You mentioned book clubs or things like that too. I will recommend. When we talk about systemic racism, this new book that came out 2 months ago, Isabel Wilkerson's new book, Cast, that I have not finished yet, but I'm in the process of reading. But really powerful. And I'll just end with that metaphor that she shares in there about the house, the structure that we have. That I may not have built my house, but I own it, and so I'm responsible for it. And so if there's a leak in it, or there's part of the structural foundation that's problematic and needs repairing, I'm responsible to fix it. So I didn't necessarily create the systemic racism in our country, but I am part of the solution to help fix it and make this world a better place. And I know Repair the World believes that strongly, hence their name. And so, Sarah, thanks for carrying that torch and leading us with that too.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Rabbi.
And thank you for taking a break from your parental leave and giving us 20 minutes of time today to do a little work and throw Judah into Connor's arms.
It's my pleasure. And
Thanks so
I hope
much.
to see you soon.
Thanks. And thanks, Brian, our executive director, from being behind the scenes and helping coordinate today.